Now in this example, we're looking again at our invoice, but I want to be able to calculate the tax. So I have a calculation here. I've got chocolate bar pop and chips, again for $1.25, $1, and 1.5. I've got some very simple formulas in here in the format of just simply multiply C6 times D6 or C7 is D7. Um, and then finally the subtotal, which is a sum calculation of going from the top to the bottom. Now that's very helpful, but it would be really nice to not have to hard code the GST as an actual number in there, so that if the tax rate does change, that it's very simple for me to update that on the website or on the spreadsheet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just create a box here. I'm just going to call it tax, and I'm going to go ahead and type 5% because that's what our tax rate is right now. I can go ahead and format that, so I can move that to the right and that to the left just so it looks, move that to the left just so it looks a little bit nicely formatted, maybe even add some color to that. But what I want to do is I want to make it so that I can change that at any time and it'll show up here. More to the point, I'd like to be able to do that on any spreadsheet, any sheet on this page, which means that I always want to be able to not only reference cell H5, but I want to be able to reference cell H5 on this particular page from any sheet. And the way to do that, or one of the ways to do that, is to use what's called a named range. A range is basically any letter number combination like this. So the range here is from E6 to E19. Here the ranges are very simple. C6 is a single cell, but it's still referred to as a range. D6 is another cell, still referred to as a range. So a range can be one cell or multiple cells. The only difference is that here, I'd like to give this range a name. I'd like to be able to use it in formulas with just a plain English word, and that word is tax. Now you'll notice, if you look in the top left-hand corner, you'll see where it says H5 here, which is telling you which cell that is. That box is actually editable, which means if I type the word tax, T-A-X, into that box and press return, now, instead of saying H5, it actually says the word tax. Now, what's great about that is I can now use that in my formula. So again, formulas always start with an equal sign, and I want to take this number here, and I'd like to multiply it by tax. Now, you see, as soon as I write the word tax, this cell lights up, this turns red, and so if I press enter now, you'll see that it's actually calculated 0.61 as my GST and has gone on to find that final value. Where this is really nice is I could actually add a column on this that's called tax, and I could actually find out what the tax is for each one of these boxes. So tax is basically just that times tax. And so I can, again, just do equals that times tax. Now, where it becomes very different from a typical calculation, whereas if I had done the H5, dragging this cursor down now, watch what happens. Because this is a named cell, dragging the cursor down doesn't move it to the next cell. In other words, instead of saying that this is E7 times H6, which would be this cell, and the next one being this cell as it moves down, it's always referencing that specific number. Just as a demonstration, if I, again, just instead of writing the word tax, if I typed H5, and I still get the same answer on this cell, but if I drag that down now, watch what happens. You'll see that this is referencing H5, but this one is referencing H6, this one's referencing H7, because in fill down, you're always pulling down the formula, which means it's going to increase it in that direction. Whereas if I use the word tax, tax is always that cell. And so when I do a fill down on that, it actually copies the formula correctly. Anyway, hope that helps.